A narcissistic person can only succeed where there is this unified understanding of this is how things are. They can only succeed there. They cannot succeed with independent thinking. With independent thinking, that completely threatens a narcissistic person from rising to the top of anywhere. And this is oftentimes what happens in relationships. If a narcissistic person is with somebody who is a person who is autonomous, right? Does things, wants to work out because it makes them feel good, dresses a certain way because it makes them feel good about themselves. If it doesn't fit into this hierarchy structure that a narcissistic person says, I can't manipulate that. I can't be over you. I can't understand it. You're not controllable. To them, you're out of control. And they hate that. So that's an absolute threat to them. There's no way for them to control you. And so oftentimes what they'll do is then try to destroy you.
You have fascinating insights on the networking skills of a narcissist. What do you think compels a narcissist to be such an aggressive social networker?
That's a very solid question right off the bat. And the way I view a narcissistic person is an absence of a self, a true identity, right? And so a lot of the social networking aspects of a narcissistic person, at least from what I've seen, is them bouncing concepts and ideas back and forth off of other people for acceptance, right? So they're aggressively just trying to, in a way, virtue signal on one hand. So they'll virtue signal, am I saying the right thing, so that they'll get feedback. And a lot of times you'll see narcissistic people be on social media saying, oh, my daughter this, my son that. And this is one thing you'll always notice about a narcissistic type of a personality is everything is mine. I was just thinking about this the other day. If you ever remember the movie Finding Nemo, there were these seagulls that were like mine, 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 mine. When you know you're observing a narcissistic person where everything on their social media is mine, my cousin, my niece, my nephew, my in-law, my mom, my dad, mine. And they're in a way trying to just garner attention to themselves. And it serves a couple purposes. On one, it makes them look good to the outside world that they're talking about all these other people, except for somebody who they've targeted, who's observing them saying kind things about other people. And like, well, how come you trash me? It doesn't make any sense. But a lot of it is just simply for their own attention, their own sense of virtue signaling, but they'll also do it in a demeaning way. So narcissistic personalities are very good at being able to read, even on social media. They can read when a good time to attack somebody is. They might see another person's comment of disagreement and they'll say, oh, that person disagrees with you. Yeah, that's right. You're an idiot. How dare you say this? And they'll take it to another level because they feel permission to do so. So really, social media allows them also the ability to hide. They're the keyboard warriors, so to speak. So they're safe, on social media physically. So there's all kinds of reasons as to why a narcissistic person would use social media as a great aggressive tool. It really helps them. And I think social media has really allowed narcissistic people that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Another one of their tools that I've heard you speak about is the intense giving. What makes the giving of a narcissist a trap?
Wow, the giving of a narcissistic person, again, a lot of this is giving not because they care about you, but it's more a form of virtue signaling, right? What's interesting about a narcissistic person is their giving oftentimes or always comes with a demand, if you will, something. It's conditional, and it's not because they want to just, for the example, bless you, right? It's so that later on they could say, oh, I did this thing for you, or I gave you this, or again, look at me. And oftentimes they'll do it publicly. They'll weaponize their giving. I have a rule within the Royal We coaching community, and it often goes like, be careful when you take things from people, right? Especially even if it's family, because it's real easy sometimes to fall into this trap of, well, they have money and they can, but be careful. Be careful, because what they're giving to you, And not only this, but it also puts you in a position of feeling like you're locked into owing them something. And they'll take full advantage of that. It's
Mm,
best to be very careful who you receive anything from.
mm,
And narcissistic people do love the opportunity to give. As a matter of fact, I've dealt with a lot of clients who oftentimes would say, the narcissistic family members of the people I'm dealing with in my life who are toxic, they're great when I'm in need.
yes.
But when I'm not in need and I just want to be there and be together, they kind of crap on me. It's like
Hmm.
they try to ruin my fun. They almost want to get me down into a place of need. And I do feel like narcissistic people love to be needed
Yes.
a lot of times, right? And if they can't be needed, if they can't have something over you, if they can't have you going to them for some reason, this, that, or the other, then they'll try to, in a way, beat you down into a place of needing them, even if you need them to explain their cruelty. Well, you still need them for something, right? So
Yeah.
oftentimes a narcissistic person, if they're not giving you gifts, giving you money, and you're worshiping them like, oh, thank you. Well, let's say you don't need any of that. You just need, you just want to be present with them and you want to have a good time with them. Well, they're going to find a way to put you in a place of need, even if they're suddenly mean to you. They kind of want you to go back to, yeah, I need you to explain to me, why did you make that comment? Why did you say something so hurtful? Because again, you're in a place of need. And one thing I've discovered about narcissists is they love it, whether you need them for good things or need them to bring closure or you need them to clarify something cruel they did. They love being needed.
Hmm.
It's almost as if to them, it locks the two of you in some kind of an enmeshed thing. You're not away from them. You're in need.
Yeah. Yeah, and the intense giving too. I mean, it can even the things can be very much Trojan horses. I've seen one of these guys. He's lent a woman a car indefinitely. So she didn't have a car and now she's got one, but it's still his, and he's going to kind of hold it over her for as long as he can. For those
Absolutely.
for those of us who are wanting to be aware of this, what are some things that we could kind of look for? Because we do want to be able to receive gifts too.
That's a great question. And as far as knowing when you can receive a gift or when you can receive something, a couple of things. One, if it's over the top,
Mm,
unexpected, right? There's nothing wrong with saying, look, thank you, but no thanks, I'm good. I challenge people in this way. Experience saying no for a while.
mm,
Okay. Even if it does seem good, be okay with saying, yeah, I'm good. Experience what it feels like to say, no, 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 I'm good. Thank you. Right. I believe that in society, a lot of, especially empathic people, we've been conditioned to just take everything. If somebody gives us something, I know I was brought up in church, and that was one of the things is that if somebody's giving you something, they're trying to bless you, don't rob the blessing from them
mm,
by not taking it. And I think that's horrible advice because you never know what's coming with that gift.
mhm.
You really don't. So I challenge people, learn the value of saying, no thanks. Thanks for the thoughts, but no, I'm good, no matter what it is, right? Experience what that feels like. And then over time, allow your discernment, which we all have discernment. We all have gut feelings. And basically, we need to get back to a place of trusting that before you take anything from somebody else. Be able to check inside, where's it coming from? Feel it out. Why does it make sense what they're giving me? Is it something that they're really meeting me with something that I need? They see that I need it and they're presenting it with the attitude of, hey, this is for you, right? No worries. They're not doing it for attention. They're not doing it in a virtue signaling way. Maybe it's even private. I just want you to, I just want you to have this. I was thinking of you or, whatever. Okay, fine. Fair enough. But scope out the environment. What's the situation? What's the context? Is it a public display of them saying, hey, I got this for you with all these people looking? Is it done through social media, like we talked about earlier? Is it an aggressive thing through social media? Take all these things into consideration in addition to practice being able to say no, thank you. And that's a big one, by the way, because it'll tell a lot about the person when you do say no. So let's say it's somebody, a family member, whatever, and you say, hey, no thanks, right? And I've discovered this too. A narcissistic person will be unhinged if you don't take their gift,
Mhm.
right? They'll say something demeaning. How dare you? How dare you not take my gift, right? And that to me says a lot about them. It also says a lot about the intentions of giving you the gift. It was for them, not for you.
Mhm.
Okay. And so you want to be able to learn the difference. So be able to tell somebody, no, no, thanks, not this time, and see how they respond. If they're cool, if they're like, okay, hey, yeah, no, no, that's no big deal. I thought of you, and whatever. And they're still friendly with you. They're still great to you. They're always loving you. Sure. The next time, if they want to offer you something, sure. I mean, that's somebody who they're not giving for them. They're actually giving something to you because it's something for you, right? So again, a lot of these things are just from navigating relationships, experience saying no, and then you'll learn over time how to feel out the situation as to whether or not it's okay.
Yeah. In hearing you talk about this too, and you're talking about the over the top nature, that's reminding me too that it's not necessarily just gifts, but it can be the over the top giving of time as well. I've seen that with some of these people, so it's a lot to think about. Another tool that I've heard you speak about is the mimicking. Um, what is the danger of being mimicked by a narcissist?
Yeah, the mimicking was one of the very first things. That's going way back when I started.
Mhm.
I called it identity theft,
Yes.
and I put a video out on that. You know, we look at mimicking in this life as something that's not a big deal. It almost can feel endearing to be around somebody who is kind of mimicking your mannerisms or maybe borrows a word here and there and they say it and you're looking and you're like, I just said that word like 5 minutes ago, dude, right? But okay, all right, that's cool. Not a big deal. But what's really weird about a narcissistic person is over time they start to collect through mimicking, through mirroring, they almost start to take on your identity in a lot of ways. And you will notice sometimes they'll sound like you, sometimes they'll laugh like you. Sometimes, if especially empaths will notice this, a lot of empathic people and or people who like to feel with others or sensitive towards others' needs, they like to draw in close to people. They'll go up and sit down next to somebody and say, "Is everything okay?" Or, "You feeling all right?" You kind of have this tendency to scope out of a room and feel when somebody just is maybe left out or feeling left out of a conversation. I feel like I've always had that. I was typically even in school, sometimes I would go and if somebody was sitting by themselves under the tree having lunch, I would oftentimes feel just pushed to go and sit down and say, "Hey, what's up?" and meet them. I was more of a social butterfly than anything else in that way. And so oftentimes even a narcissistic person that will pick up on that and they'll watch and they'll observe and maybe you did that with them because a lot of times when you meet a narcissistic person for the first time, they're sitting kind of scowling and kind of down and out and they have a mad look on their face and they're mad at this thing and that thing and the other and they're irritated. They're very irritable people. It's not like they sit alone and they're okay with it. They're oftentimes just kind of hard staring, a lot of people. And so you can go and sit to them, talk to them, and try to have small talk or whatever. And then you'll start to notice them doing that with others. And
Mhm.
it's really weird. And what will then take place is while they're doing that with others, they will start to then attack you. And then they'll start to talk to others about what a mean person you are. And so they're doing this thing where they are taking your abilities in a way and getting rid of you and kind of carrying on that. They saw that it was in some way, I guess, effective or whatever. And yeah, so it's interesting. These
Mhm.
are deep questions, by the way, deep psychological questions.
Thanks. That's why I came to you. Yeah.
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 I hope
Uh,
I'm doing you justice here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, these are things that I've heard you say. You're kind of expanding on them. I think you used a phrase in one of your videos to use you against you, and that's kind of the example you're painting there. It
Yeah.
is flattering, to have these experiences where it's like, oh, she really reminds me of myself, even though in fact that person is kind of mimicking you as a tactic. What is the defense there when you recognize that?
The defense, well, first of all, when it comes to dealing with toxic and narcissistic people, the best defense is to not allow yourself to get enmeshed to begin with. right? So we have to check our expectations because there really is no defense against
Mm.
another person and how they operate in life. And I've learned that too. We tend to want to get into this place where we are correcting a narcissistic person. Like, why are you doing that? Why are you borrowing my words? Why are you acting like me? What? No, that's the wrong thing to do because it's a never-ending trap of excuses and demeaning and devaluations, and it's a horrible mess, right? So you, the best defense to have is if somebody is borrowing and using your words, that's fine, but don't give them any more. It starts to make no sense to engage with them, try to defend yourself, try to point out how they're doing X, Y, Z and copying you and mirroring you. All you're doing is really feeding them even more about who you are. Does this make sense?
Hmm.
Now you're giving them intimate details about what bothers you. Now, now you're just giving them. I imagine here's what most people don't understand about a lot of narcissistic people. They're brilliant in a way of like they're like computers. Again, there's a lack of self. So it's almost like they absorb their environment at such a rapid pace. They could this is what allows them to be chameleons. They could jump from being involved with churches and be buddy buddy with the pastors and then a month later go and join a biker gang and fit in right there too. So they're a constant clean slate that just absorbs like a sponge. Against that, there's no defense except to be careful about what you give. Give out of what you're comfortable giving. Share out of what you're comfortable sharing. When you feel like something's being used against you, back off.
Hmm.
Right? When you feel like you're the only one giving and talking and you're not receiving, it's not reciprocal, there's another indication that they're siphoning from you.
Hmm.
They're siphoning your energy. They're siphoning your mindset, your world outlook, which it's not even really theirs. They're just siphoning it, right? You'll know this because it's not going to seem reciprocal. You're not really gaining anything from the conversation. It, but this is a tricky spot too, because we look at their mirroring as us getting something. You might feel like you're gaining because of how they might mirror you. And what that looks like is they just kind of say, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, awesome, right? But it's not the same as really receiving anything. So pay attention to that as well.
Hmm. So we talked about how the narcissist is building this network, and maybe some of these things are happening, but they're slipping by us. At some point, the narcissist would want to test and see if they can make you an accomplice. How does the narcissist kind of test people to see who's going to be that accomplice for them?
That's a great question too. I'm not certain that I have seen a narcissistic person test to see if you're an accomplice. It's one of these things where, and I've discovered this too. You're either a feeler or you're not. I
Mm.
typically think, and you can read Sigmund Freud's work on the people's attachments or whatever. You have
Yeah.
feelers and TIs and TEs, and I really should get more into that. But typically, uh, a feeler is going to struggle around a narcissistic person. A narcissistic person is going to struggle around a feeler because they're not leading with that
Mm.
at all.
Mm.
And you would have to not be a feeler in order to be an accomplice with a narcissistic person because they don't feel the same way that a feeler was. They're more they're thinking. They're more strategic. And even as a feeler myself, I've wrestled with this because I used to ask this question all the time. But logically, even if you're a logical thinker, wouldn't logic say be good to this person and they'll be good to you? So I struggle with that. But even that's coming from a place of feeling. It's coming from a place of morality. It's coming from a place of my own internal values and standards. And a narcissistic person is going to scope you out for that type of stuff. Do you
Mhm.
operate out of a sense of moral standards, values, feeling based stuff? Or do you operate out of what's going to get me ahead logically, even if I have to step on somebody's face? And that's typically the type of people that they're going to surround themselves with. They're going to unify, and narcissistic people are oftentimes very tribalistic. You'll catch, and this is another area because we live in a conditioned society to want to paint people who are isolated or loners as the issues or as the narcissists. Not the case, right? Most narcissistic people have large groups of friends. In fact, they travel in packs like wolves, right?
Yeah.
And it's for that reason. One, you know, they do need accomplices, uh, but two, it's very much a when they fit into this group or this dynamic, this is how it is. And if you're not like that, you're out. Or if if you're not about them getting ahead, you're out type of a thing.
Mhm. And I think we're going to get more into sort of how they, within that pack, they use gossip and things. Is the gossip a test in itself, do you think, when they feed you some of that and see if you take it, or is there something to that sort of initial experience?
It could be. I
Mhm.
do recall, in fact, a lot of times, and we talk about this now in narcissistic abuse communities, but when a person comes to you and is talking to you about another person,
Mhm.
be prepared because
Yeah.
that's eventually they're going to talk about you like that, right?
Yeah.
That's just, and it's the absolute truth. So, yes, they will test you by coming up and talking about other people, sharing their experiences. And if you are a feeler or if you're a diplomatic person, for example, and you're going to say, oh, well, maybe they're just having a bad day, or did you ever think about X, Y, and Z? And you're not thinking anything of it. You're not thinking you're offending them. But again, with their tribalistic, uh, hard look at kind of us versus them, they're like, oh, okay, well, you're not on my side. How dare you? And so, yes, they will use that as a form of testing.
Mhm. So these people that surround the narcissist, there are phrases, the fan club, the flying monkeys. I think I've heard you use the phrase a victim of compliance. What do you mean by that?
In my personal experience, I dealt with a family, and it happened to be in-laws,
Hmm.
and it was a situation where, and I remember when I started talking about it, people were like, "You mean to say you dealt with an entire family like that? Are you sure you're not the problem?" Well, I mean, maybe I was the problem, but the problem is I didn't comply with
Yeah.
the family dynamics and the way they treated each other, and so I had a hard time with that. And there were moments where it seemed to me, for example, the grandparents in the situation were outnumbered by all the grandchildren who were, a little younger than me, and the siblings of of the mother of my kids. They really kind of ruled and dominated, and you know what I mean. They're a rowdy bunch. I mean, they really were. It's what started the row we on the narcissistic abuse thing because they were really, our way or the highway type of
Hmm.
a thing, and we get to pick on you, and it was this like watching it. It was like a fight for some kind of status or position in the family, and I wanted no part of that. I'm like, look, I'm married to become a family. I don't care about fighting for position in yours, right?
Hmm.
And they didn't get that. But what started happening was even through all the smear campaigning and the gossiping, the grandparents also had to change their view of me. And because I started going to them, I'm like, look, I'm coming over. We're coming over. We'd like to get along. What can we do this? That. And they just had to get real cold. And I felt at that time they really had no choice because they knew they were dealing with, well, their own grandkids, their own kids that, as we talked about, narcissistic people are, it's our way or it's no way. And I feel that like they already knew that. And so if they would have tried to work with me and say, hey, yeah, let's talk to them about the way they're treating, I feel like they were like, no, it's going to blow something up. It's going to create this huge family war. So I was expendable. It's almost like, sorry, Kev, you're out. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And they and it, no, they practically said that. It's like it is what it is. You know, in a very mean way. I remember, but yeah. And so I call them victims of compliance because there was one time when I did go and I visited real quick with the mother of my kids, and the grandmother looked at me and she had a little bit of water in her eyes. I could tell she wished that things were different.
Hmm.
But at the same time, she was just tied down. She was tied down. And oftentimes, these victims of compliance, they will get like that. I've had clients that would tell me, that they know their children are out hurting people, doing horrible things, but they're so protective over this. Maybe it's because of blood. Maybe because they buy into the blood's thicker than water. The family ties are the strongest, and so they refuse to look at what their own family's doing that's wrong. They refuse to look at it that way. and instead will protect it, which does nothing for them. It doesn't help them. It doesn't teach them to be better, but they're victims of compliance. And, I think a good case in point would probably be the story of like Gabby Petito, for example. I don't know if you recall, Gabby Petito was the girl who she was killed by her boyfriend, Brian Laundrie. It was, a few years back. And immediately he did this thing, ran to his family, and they were helping him to cover it up initially. Okay. Victims of compliance.
Mm.
And so that in and of itself speaks about the character of what we would call victims of compliance or enablers. It can be either one. It's, we're unsure.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely an inability to side on the side of justice and instead side on the side of tribalism, if that makes sense. That's the only way I can, or you know what I mean?
Yes.
This before what's fair and what's just. And that's something that I didn't quite understand about narcissism. I typically side on the side of just what I hope and what I perceive is right. Mm-hmm. Even if my kids go and do something, I have little kids now, but if they grow up and they do something, they hurt people, I'm the type of person you're going to go fix that, whatever it takes. You need to go spend some time in jail, go spend time in jail. That's right. Not everybody has that. And typically narcissistic types of personalities don't. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, how do we clean this up? How do we hide you? Quick, go get in the closet, right? Let's hide you. Let's make them out to be the bad guys.
Right.
You didn't do anything wrong. They deserved it. Okay. Again, you're getting into the differences of people's psychology, and that's a deep one.
Mm-hmm. So people are wary of these enablers, flying monkeys, victims of compliance. What are things that might help you to spot them a little earlier rather than when you feel the burden?
I don't know if that's something you can spot. Victims of compliance, they kind of switch on a dime.
Yeah.
That, when I look back at the situation with the in-laws, that was by far the most hurtful thing, was the victim of compliance, the enabling. I was actually okay with the name calling, the cussing, the fight starting, this and that. It's like not a big deal. I mean, look, I can handle myself, and I didn't really feel physically threatened. It started to get annoying. I was a new father. I didn't want certain attitudes around my kids. You know what I mean? And I was okay with it up until I realized that when I was like going to the grandparents or the people who should be at the top of this family dynamic, right? They're at the top. And I didn't understand it. I'm like, you all are in control, not them. It's up to you whether we all get along. And I don't feel it's like they didn't realize that. Victims of compliance, right? Their grandkids and what was underneath them ruled them, and I guess supported them. Whatever they could do to look good to those underneath them, right? And so that was the most hurtful thing to me, and because I didn't expect it. I expected, through all of the love that I thought they showed me in the beginning of the relationship, I thought that, and all the love I tried to show them, I thought that when I would go to them and say, hey, can we stop some of these things? Can we, you know what I mean? We're trying to have a good time. We're trying to have a peaceful relationship here. And to see them switch instantly and into this, you're a bad guy. You're a bad guy. How dare you challenge, what's been going on here and try to stir the pot. I'm like, I'm not trying to stir it. I'm trying to stop certain things because I can see it's getting hostile. It's getting aggressive. That was the most hurtful thing, because I looked at those people as having the ability to change it because it was their family. It was their environment, but they wouldn't. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't do it. I wasn't prepared for that. So there's no real way to be prepared for the enablers. Especially, they are the ones, by the way, the enablers are going to hurt you the most. It's the ones who are victims of compliance that are going to hurt you the most. In that, if you're dealing with communal narcissism, and there's those are the ones to where you feel like you can go and get help, and they're going to turn their back on you, and you're not going to know why, and you're going to say, wait a minute, and I thought you cared, right? And that's what's really going to hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you said this is this is the one that hurts the most. And I know there are lots of elements of Christianity and the things that you talk about as well. If you've read Dante's Inferno, the deepest circle of hell is for the betrayers. And I think
Hmm.
there's something to that. There's something to being human and just the
Hmm.
pain of betrayal. It's unique and it's
It's the
particularly
betrayal. Yeah, it's the betrayal. Right.
yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
when dealing with these people, that's the thing that really stings. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And what narcissistic abuse of any kind really exposes you to is the betrayers in your life,
Yeah.
oftentimes. So, again, it's not always the most painful part is not always just that one narcissistic person who's attacking you. It's when you go and you try to get help, and it could be maybe people at church, people you called friends, people you called family, and they either turn their back on you, right, or they try to tell you that you're the one that's wrong or whatever, and they're just not able to see your side. That is it feels like a betrayal, and it
Mhm.
feels like, wait a minute, you know me, right? Don't you? I mean, we've had so many conversations. I mean, surely you can't think that I'm what this person's saying I am, right? And to feel that betrayal, that's one of the most difficult parts. That's what leads people to feel like they have nobody.
Yes.
It's not necessarily just the one narcissistic person they were dealing with. What makes them feel isolated, misunderstood, and like they have nowhere to go is the victims of compliance or the enablers that they did not expect,
Mhm.
whether it's other family members or other people they work with, right? So what starts off as just an issue with one person, you're like, okay, no big deal. This person's being mean. Let me go talk to this person. Maybe we can try to work this out, and nope. Now suddenly you realize, wait a minute, I have nowhere to go. And then you feel alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's hard.
Yeah. Kevin, so if you're in a network with one of these people, a narcissistic personality disorder type person is at the top, and you decide that you want to get away, um, it seems they perceive you as a threat. What makes your independence a threat to the narcissist?
That's a great question.
Mhm.
That's a great, I love this question because it's so deep, right? It's narcissistic people, again, going back, revisiting something I said a moment ago, they don't operate from within a true sense of self. They can morph and grab on to any group, and they need to. You put a narcissistic person in a hierarchy structure of a corporation or whatever, they'll dominate, they'll kill it, they'll crush it. Why? Because they scope out the rules, they understand the rules. This is how it works. I can I can manipulate this to get to where I want to go. I can climb this ladder. They visualize it as a ladder. Somebody who's independent doesn't have that ladder, doesn't operate by it. There's nothing for a narcissistic person to climb. They see no way to win or to get on top or to control you. And they're extremely threatened by that. They just don't know what to do with you.
Mhm.
So this goes into all kinds of deep conversations, but I mean, you can, for example, even in the political climate that we live in, I'm not trying to make this a political discussion, but you have a lot on one political side that thinks everybody should be one way, do one thing. This is what you have to do for the good of the society. This is how we are. You have other side people that are like, that's not good for me, right? This is my body. I don't want to put that in my body, for example. And, more on the independent. I'm independent, right? You're not going to tell me what to do. Well, if we don't like that because we can't control you, I can't win. I can't dominate over you. And that's a serious threat to a lot of people, but to narcissistic people in particular. A narcissistic person can only succeed where there is this unified understanding of this is how things are. They can only succeed there. They cannot succeed with independent thinking. With independent thinking, that completely threatens a narcissistic person from rising to the top of anywhere. And this is oftentimes what happens in relationships. If a narcissistic person is with somebody who is a independent person who is autonomous, right, does things, laughs when they want to laugh because something's genuinely funny, nothing to do with the narcissistic person, wants to work out because it makes them feel good. Not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It dresses a certain way because it makes them feel good about themselves. Again, if it doesn't fit into this hierarchy structure that a narcissistic person says, I can't manipulate that. I can't be over you. I can't understand it. You're not controllable. To them, you're out of control. And they hate that. So that's an absolute threat to them. There's no way for them to control you. And so oftentimes what they'll do is then try to destroy you.
Yeah. So in the process of trying to destroy you, we can get into smear campaigns a bit. What can be done to maybe prevent getting smeared in the first place? Is there any sort of, you know, vaccination against that?
There's not.
Yeah.
There's not. Smear campaigns are going to happen.
Yeah.
You're I challenge people with this because a lot of times people say, when will the smear campaign end?
Yeah.
It ends when you end it.
Mm.
So what this means is that so long as you are paying attention, so long as you kind of have your ear to the ground of what they're saying within this group or within this place, you're going to be in that smear campaign. When you realize that it's taking place, right? Oftentimes I say it ends when you're able to walk away from not just that narcissistic person, but all of them.
Mm-hmm.
All of them, right? When you learn the value of, it's not to be overly stoic, but not caring. When you realize that all these people, let's say it's a family function or a certain group of friends, in the grand scheme of things, if these people cared about you at all, they wouldn't even be entertaining the smear campaign, right?
Yeah.
So perhaps you needed to see to what extent this family or this group of friends or this job is even for you, or you're a good fit. So long as you're there trying to have your ear to the ground of what the smear campaign is, it's going to hurt. It's going to sting because they're talking about you. To the extent that you're like, I'm done. I get it. I don't need to be here. Right? Then you step out. And only when you step out and you get away from them do you realize that all those people, even all those friends, they're tiny, tiny droplets, tiny drops of nothingness in the grand scheme of things, and the amount of jobs that you could have and the amount of possible friendships that you can make later in life, and even people you can call family. I'm on board with, listen, your family, once you are no longer a child and you're out in the world, your family's chosen. A lot of times people are like, well, you can't choose your family. If it's your family treating you, you don't get to choose them. Yeah, you don't get to choose them when you're a baby. But I mean, if you think about it, having this idea that you don't get to choose your family, I mean, that sucks. Some kids are beaten. Some kids are thrown out. Some kids have to be adopted, right? And you're going to tell me that you only get one family? No, no, no. You at least get two. You get a family that you didn't get to choose. But I believe that God orchestrated it in a great way to where one day you do get to choose your family. And it's a family based on acceptance and understanding and reciprocal love. It's not based on you trying to fit into some hole somebody wants to pound you in. And so you really do just have to get to that place of, okay, I get it. These people are not who I thought they were.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what ends the smear campaign, is when you eliminate yourself and then they no longer have you to talk about eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And they got to find somebody else.
So that is a great approach. It is also very hard to get there. Have you seen anything that sort of helps people to get there? Maybe an exercise or something? Because if you're going through this, you're getting pushed out. You're also being smeared at the same time. So now you're losing your allies on the outside as well. That's tough.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's I call it a purging. It's the great purging, right? It's where you lose everything.
Yeah.
And you hit rock bottom. Oftentimes there's no escaping that. There's no escaping hitting rock bottom when you deal with narcissistic people. Oftentimes I look at the whole experience of experiencing narcissistic abuse as hitting rock bottom. It's an ego death. And oftentimes this means that the family you thought were family, the friends you thought were your friends, the people that you have been trying to fit in with the majority of your life have not been the people you are really destined to be with and who you really connect with. You were there for one reason or another. Maybe you thought you had to be. Society conditioned you to try to fit in. And that's how we all are. I tell people, when I talk about the ego, the way I understand an ego is that it's the way we perceive the world, and it's the way we perceive ourselves in the world. The way we view the world and how we think the world views us and who we ought to be in the world. But what I've discovered is it seems to me like that's given to us. The first one, our first ego isn't really ours. It's given to us by our parents. We're told who we are, how to look, how to act. Then it's given to us by public institutionalized education. We're told what to learn and what jobs we can have and how to get along with kids. And even church has a part in conditioning us in our first ego of how we ought to love people and how to turn the other cheek. And so nothing's really ours. It's given to us and we follow along with it. And it works until it doesn't. We are trying to fit in, trying to fit in, trying to fit in until finally we come across this narcissistic person that says, you're an idiot, you're stupid, and you're selfish, and all the stuff that we thought all of our lives we had enough information to where we're not that. And we're like, wait a minute, no, I'm not selfish. I'm giving and I'm loving because this is what I was taught. And I'm doing everything I was told I should be doing all my life. And now you're telling me that I'm this, it's nothing. So you need to let that break down, and you almost need to let everybody turn their backs from you, because this is when you start to construct your second ego. At least that's what I call it, which is from the ground floor, and it's from a different perspective. Now it's taking all the bits and pieces that you learned from church about how people are and how the world is and how you are to the world, and taking bits and pieces from public schooling and taking all these bits and pieces, and you're able to build and see what really worked and what's life really like and what are relationships really like and how do women really operate and how do guys really operate and what have I experienced, and you weave in your experience with it and you construct your new ego, which does make you look different. Now you go back out into the world and you're more cautious. Now you do
Yeah.
see things a mile away.
Yeah.
Now when somebody says, oh, go, you have to do this for this, you're able to say, no, I'm not doing that, right? And it's an adjustment, and it's really hard because you find yourself going against what you spent half your life being okay with. And you'll notice that, it's a change. It's a change for sure, but it's an important change. And I hope that answers the question. I
Yeah.
try to remember.
Yeah, I think we're really talking about, recognizing the weight of it and having some hope that's going to kind of make the process easier, is what it seems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's having the hope that's going to, nothing's going to make it easier. You have to go through the pain
Yeah.
of losing all of it.
Yeah.
And which is not easy, because again, it's the death of everything you thought was true about people, about family, about friends, about relationships, about marriage, about whatever it is you're suffering through. There is a complete transformation that has to take place because it was wrong. You were lied to in a lot of ways about all of that stuff, right? And that's a very difficult thing to navigate. And a lot of people get stuck there for a long time because they don't realize yet that they're supposed to build based on their knowledge and their experience. Now they're supposed to build your new identity. You're supposed to take these things now from your experience and rebuild. A lot of people get stuck on the, I can't, and a lot of people who can't leave toxic relationships, or they're constantly thinking about what was behind them, it's because they're too scared to move forward. I don't know what I'm going to look like. I don't know what my new worldview is going to be. I don't know. And so they constantly are looking back. And that's the most dangerous place to be in. It's kind of like the biblical story of, Lot and his wife. And, God had them leave Sodom and Gomorrah because he was destroying Gomorrah because it was a bad place for them to be in. But Lot's wife looked back. Why? Well, because that's what I knew. Yes, it's bad. Yes, the people were horrible. Yeah, but it's, I'm scared of not having it. I'm scared of what's out there because it's brand new. It's a clean slate. I don't know what that looks like. And I feel like that's where people get stuck coming out of narcissistic abuse or toxic relationships. You can't help but recognize that your eyes have been opened. You now know what evil is. You now know what that pain is. But at the same time, what's forward, building your own life, judging people, using your discernment. And when I say judge people, I don't mean it in a horrible way. I don't mean like going and picking at people, not like narcissists judge people. I mean being able to approach people and really observe and watch and look at them and try to determine, are you a good person for me?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's scary for a lot of people because they've never done that. They weren't taught to. They're just taught to be good, be loving, turn the other cheek and be nice and this and that. So, now moving into a different way of living that is protecting yourself, which is a huge responsibility, is scary. And a lot of people don't also, a lot of people have a hard time with that. They weren't taught that going into life that your first and foremost responsibility is in fact to preserve and protect yourself. We've kind of all bought into this idea that, well, so long as we're nice and good to people, we'll be protected. And that's why a lot of people do that and get into toxic relationships, and they give and love and serve, and in exchange, please protect me, keep me safe. And at some point, it's like, yeah, when that shatters and you're not protected and you're hurt by the people you were giving to, you're back at this place of, oh, wow, I have to take myself first and foremost seriously enough and valuable enough to protect myself.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's going to do that for you. And I've discovered this. Nobody is going to take as good a care of you as you are, first and foremost. And so until we learn how to do that, we're going to be in trouble in any relationship. We're giving too much power to other people, other relationships, to have our best interest in mind. And they don't. They have their best interest in mind. So we also, in a way, need to learn how to, first and foremost, have our best interest in mind, but at the same time, then learn what we're okay with giving, how to give, how to love out of that without being taken advantage of.
Yeah, we're back to in the beginning how the narcissist kind of likes you when you're dependent. So if you're experiencing being in the network, in the club, but you haven't been smeared yet, but you're seeing it, if you're wise, you realize that you're witnessing your own future. Now, there's an intimidation with that to not leave. And we've talked a lot about the costs of leaving and things. Maybe could we kind of flip that? What is the cost of staying in the gossip and the mockery?
The cost of that is, that's a good question because I didn't stay long enough, but I would say the cost of that would be to deny and to rob you of who you're supposed to be. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Sure, you can stay in and join the tribe, but then you never have any more than what that tribe has. Right? Or you can venture out there and see what's out there for you. And this is a very personal choice because a lot of people, we'll talk about those who are victims of compliance or the enablers, they choose to stay oftentimes, right? Okay, fine, fair enough. But there's certain individuals that's deep down, that's not going to work. It's not good enough. So all you have to do is look at this environment that you're in, family dynamic, job structure, whatever it is. Take a hard look at it. If that's what you want for your life, if that's the best you can do, then fine, stay, right? And you can have everything that they have. You can probably learn to be just as narcissistic as those people. You can engage in their battles. You can climb to the top of that hierarchy if you want to, but that's all there is right there, right? It's, to me, it's the story of for example, Abraham. I know I use a lot of biblical references, but this really helps me put in perspective. In the story of Abraham, God said, Abraham, I want to bless you, make you the father of many nations. But here's the deal. You have to leave your family. You have to leave it didn't say family, it said kindred. You have to leave your kindred, the whole community, the whole town, the whole state. You can't have any part of that because what I perceive as God is saying is, I'm not going to compete with those people. And so long as you're with them, you're going to have what they say is okay. And you're going to be battling with that. There's no way God's going to tell Abraham, this is what's going to happen. He's going to go tell the community. They're all going to say, you're an idiot. Okay. And then he'll cower down because that's what happens when you're outnumbered in a tribe of people, right? Mm-hmm. So God said, no, leave. The deal is this, you leave and you follow me, what I'm going to say, right, as an individual, and let me bless you, and I'll show you what you can become. And I feel like, in a way, God's telling us all that. If you're in a place where you're looking at what's available, and if you want that, sure, stay and play that game because that's what it is. It's their game, and you can win at that game. If you feel that that's not who you are, and if that's the best that they offer, and you're like, no, I want something more. And more, by the way, doesn't even necessarily mean money. It can mean more as just behavior and relationships and intimacy and closeness. if there's anything where you're just desiring something, something's off here, then that's how you make the decision. And the cost is, oftentimes, the cost is those people, that
Mhm.
family, the people you once called dad, mom, brother, sister, the place you once called home. That's the cost. But it can be a painful cost, but it just depends on, you know, where you feel led.
Mhm.
Oftentimes I do truly believe that I work a lot with people who are in that place. They have a hard time cutting that cost. The risk of, but I challenge the other, the risk of not looking at that cost is that, well, you stay and now you cut out what you could have been, the relationships you could have had, right? And you'll never know.
Mhm. Kevin, one thing that we're getting at too is, the possibility of change within, and it's counter to Christian ideas of, redemption and things like that, to think that a narcissist can't change. Someone who's truly narcissistic personality disorder, they're effectively intreatable. Is there any hope to resolution with them, to redemption with them, or is that pearls before swine?
Yeah, yeah, pearls before swine. It's a great one. The whole thing of change with people is, first of all, I believe, yes, there's change is possible,
Mhm.
right? With anyone,
Okay.
but not because of me or not because necessarily of you. Oftentimes, when a dynamic shows itself in a relationship, it is what it is. You're not going to be the one to change them. You're not, it doesn't matter how many times you pray for them, how many conversations you try to have, they solidify in a way in that dynamic who you are. And you've solidified who they are. There is no changing. A lot of times, a lot of Christians will point to stories like Paul, for example, of the main focus of how somebody can change. There, one time were killing Christians, and then God changed them. But what they forget about that story is that it wasn't people who changed Paul. It wasn't Christians.
Mhm.
If it was the Christians who kept going and trying to change Paul, kept getting killed, right? It wasn't until Paul was by himself with nobody around, right? Where God met him and changed him, humbled him. And I feel like, especially as Christians or people who are believers, they miss that. A lot of people think that they are the role of God and they are the role of Jesus, and they're the ones that go and speak into this narcissistic person. I'm going to pray for you, and you're going to transform right before my eyes into this loving person. And it's like, wrong. They're going to kill you. That's all that's going to happen, right? It's not until you release them. Sure, plant your seed, cut yourself off, get the heck out of there, right? Especially if it's negative, if it's damaging, right? Let God do the changing. But too often we want to keep looking over our back. We want to keep looking. We want to look for that change. It's like we feel as though it's our, to make sure that we're effective or whatever. Don't even worry about that. Yes, a narcissistic person can change, but it's not going to be with you in their life. And that's hard for a lot of people to accept.
So if you are trying to accept and come to the end of this and get away from someone like this, the healing process is lengthy for many people. It's complex. There's a lot that's happening to it. I've heard you speak about three phases that you see to this healing process. That's introspection, validation, transformation. What are those steps? How does that go?
The introspection aspect of it is first trying to sort out what you're doing wrong in a relationship. This is a true mark of an empathic person. We typically are walking around again with that first ego. We're going through the checklist. Am I giving? Yes, I gave them. I'm serving. I'm loving. They called me names. I didn't say anything back. And so we go through the introspection of, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? How come it's not working? That's the introspection. That in and of itself can last a very long time, right? I mean, I stayed years in dealing with the in-laws. I remember I it was rough. I knew I shouldn't have been there, but I kept putting it on me introspectively. Uh, I'm not doing enough. I'm not being kind enough. Maybe if I try it this way, maybe they'll see a different side of me. On and on. We all get into this place. That's introspection, and that's where you first start to see that there's something wrong. You feel like there's something wrong with what you're doing, and there is. What's wrong is that you're you're not accepting the reality of who they are, and you haven't yet accepted the reality of who they are and who you are differently. You're trying to enmesh it. So the introspection is trying to mull through what you're doing wrong. It's a lot of I've got this. It's kind of out of a place of arrogance. Okay, I can do this. I can be called some more names. I'm going to keep trying. It's not that big of a deal. I can turn the other cheek. I'm strong, right? I'm this good Christian guy. I can do this. That's all the introspection phase, and it can last a long time. Validation is when you realize it's not me. How come no matter what I'm doing, how come no matter how many times I'm trying to give to them and I'm trying to love them, it's not working, it's backfiring. So that's when you seek validation. And this is where you start to maybe go to other people. What do you think's going on here?
Yeah.
And this could be another lengthy process. It could take a couple of years because you're going to get a lot of bad information. I know I did. I would go to the church and say, hey, this is what's going on with the in-laws. And every time I'm trying to be good, I'm trying to iron this out. I'm trying to understand this. I was being told, well, just stay and keep loving them. But that's what I was doing when I was introspecting. And by the way, that's dangerous because during that time of introspection, if you're not careful, you can start to believe that you're not good enough. You're not loving enough. And oftentimes the church was a part of this, and without even being aware of it, is they're telling people by simply saying, love them more. Another way to look at that, if you're not careful, is I wasn't loving enough. Okay. So now you got people stuck and trapped, feeling like they're not good enough, they're not doing enough, even though they're giving their all, right? And to a narcissistic person, by the way, and this is what people need to understand about narcissists, is that you think that you're showing them through love and kindness how much you care. In reality, they're seeing what they can get away with, and you're still going to reward them. So in other words, you're just rewarding their bad behavior, right? So to a narcissistic person, it's like, I just called you a douchebag the other day, and now here you are bringing me lunch. Well, that's a good deal. Let's see what you'll do for me if I ramp it up even more.
Yeah.
This is great, right?
Yeah.
We don't look at it that way, but that's exactly what's taking place
Yeah.
in marriages. I mean, I talk to women all the time in marriage. It's like, my husband, he's a jerk to me, this and that. And so I wore the sexy outfit and I gave him all this sex. And I'm like, all you're telling him is that the meaner he is, the more you're going to jump his bones. You're rewarding the bad behavior. You're not doing anything, right? So the validation phase is when you really need to seek out perhaps coaching, counseling, therapists, and somebody who's really actually going to listen to what you're giving and start to see the imbalance and help you to understand the imbalance and help you to understand where you're losing yourself. And not only that, but help you to break some of the old conditioned worldviews, such as keep giving. And that's how somebody is going to change, right? A lot of these things are old and outdated. It's not going to work. So, that's the validation. It could take a long time. The transformation is the most painful part. That's when you realize that it was never me. I gave my all. I tried. And when I was loving, they amped up their abuse, right? I was rewarding their bad behavior. And so it just got worse and it got worse. So the transformation is being able to look at the situation finally from a different perspective, that you're nothing like each other. And what you thought the relationship was, it never really was that, right? Mm-hmm. And now you have to be rewired. You have to hit rock bottom. You have to allow all those old things that you believed would work for you in relationships, and you have to break them all down and rebuild it. And no more is it about you trying to do things for others so that you can be accepted and loved and received. It's a reciprocal, this is who I am. I need to see who you are. Do we get along? Does this fit? Do I make you the best version of you? Do you make me the best version of me? If not, then, well, I'm not going to waste my time. Right?
Yeah.
And typically, and I help people to understand this is what relationships are for. I feel like we have to explore the truth about relationships. I feel like that's something that we don't talk enough about. And relationships are for that purpose. It's equally yoked in a way, or suitable helpmates. They're supposed to be helpful. Relationships are helpful. If it's not a helpful relationship, and it doesn't matter if it's family, friends, coworkers, or especially marriage, if it's not helpful, helping each other, then what is it? It's a waste of time where you're just destroying each other, right? And so during the transformative phase, you have to go into that of self-acceptance. This is who I am. This is what I need to be the best version of me. This is what I offer to help somebody be the best version of them. Now, how do I find that person? And it's not going to be accidental. It's not going to be this thing where I'm just going to sit back and pray that God brings somebody into my life. That's a dangerous place to be because you're shutting off your ability to judge, observe. I mean, we have like six senses that we know about, right? Eyes, ears, mouth, sounds. We even got hairs that stand up. We are so phenomenally designed to sniff out and scope out problems, but at some point in society, we've learned to just shut it off. And worse than that, we're like, well, I'm just going to sit and let God bring some perfect person into my life. And now you're in a perfect spot to meet a narcissist because they're going to come in and they're going to say, wow, God must have brought me to you.
Yeah.
And just like that, you're like, oh, thank you, God. And you know nothing about him because
Yeah.
you've shut off your judgment, your discernment, your ability to observe, right? So the transformation is getting to that place where you have radical self-acceptance. You now know who you are. You know what you don't like. You know what you can't be around. You know what doesn't allow you to be the best version of you. You know what you offer. You know what you need. And so now you're in a transformative way, you're able to go out and navigate relationships differently.
Mhm. And Kevin, this is a lengthy process, and it doesn't really have a checklist. But people want to move through this. Is there something that can be done to move it along quicker, or how does the sort of length of it all play out?
That's a good question, and it's different for everybody. I wish I can sit here and say right now you can do this in a week.
Yeah.
You can't. I do tell people this. Look, um, first of all, it's not a race,
Mhm.
right? We're not in a race to see who can heal from narcissistic abuse the fastest. It doesn't exist, right? All you need to know is that where you were in this past relationship, it was off. It was debilitating. You're in no further of a place in your own life, having been a part of it, right? It was excruciatingly painful. Every step you take in a different direction, day by day, will eventually get you to a better place. There is no such thing as a timeline to exactly get you to a place of where you feel 100% better, or where you are at this place of healing. When I say healing, I mean completely healed, right? For a lot of people, myself included, you may never feel completely healed.
Hmm.
That day may never come. You may find yourself in this place where you're going to live with this pain of what you've experienced for the rest of your life. But this pain comes as a protector. It's the only thing, because we can be such numbskulls sometimes, right?
Yeah.
There was this meme I remember. It's like the meme was this. It was a goat, a baby goat, and the goat farmer. And the meme said something like, my relationship with Jesus. And this goat jumped into this little wedge and got stuck in between the ground. And the goat farmer goes and picks it out and puts him up. And he hops and he jumps right back into the wedge again.
Mhm.
Right? We can do that. As humans, we kind of can go from one bad relationship to another if we're not careful. What I've discovered is that oftentimes the pain that we live with, don't fight it. Don't try to run from it. Don't try to ignore it. Let's not take this attitude of, the narcissist is out of my life. I'm ready to go live my best life now. This stuff bothers me. I see it on Instagram all the time. People are like, I got out of the narcissist, and they're in the bar with drinks and their girlfriends and their tight dresses on. And I'm like, you're going to meet another douchebag next week, and it's going to start all over, because this healing process is not about pretending that it doesn't hurt and going out and, you know what I mean, and trying to distract yourself. At some point in our lives, we carry this pain with us. And when you're ready to take relationships seriously, right? And you're going to carry the pain with you, it's going to be a protector. It's going to, in a way, be that reminder as to what not to get involved with. And I challenge people to look at it that way. So, Paul said, he walked with thorn in his flesh. What was that? It's this pain there's a constant reminder. And in some ways, we have to be okay with it. It's not about getting rid of the pain, it's about embracing it. What is this particular pain from this toxic experience that you had? What is that pain? Why does it want to live with you? What's it trying to teach you? What is it trying to help you to navigate? Oftentimes I tell people this, look, because of how we were conditioned, many of us are, if we're not careful, we're one small relationship mistake away from becoming a statistic. We have to remember that we share a world. We're not all the same as people. We share a world with psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists, murderers, killers, rapists, molesters. Part of our involvement with narcissistic people is our failure to really accept that. We can see it on the news all day long. We can hear the stories, Gabby Petito killed by Brian Laundrie. We can hear about this thing blowing up over there. We can hear about but until you come face to face with it, it's not real. Mm-hmm. When you deal with the narcissistic person and you get that evil stare for the first time, or you sense somebody could kill you if they thought they could get away with it, but they can't, so they use their words instead, which, by the way, is still killing you, right? A lot of times people don't realize that, but narcissistic personalities who try to bury you verbally, mentally, or emotionally, they might as well be killing you, but they just don't want to go to jail, right? Mm-hmm. But we struggle with that. It's like, am I really up against that type of hatred? Yeah, it exists. It's real. And now you've seen it. So if there's a bit of that hurt, that pain, that discomfort that has to stay with you for life, let it, embrace it. It's protecting you. It's protecting you so that you don't become a statistic, so that you don't go and make that mistake that you can't get out of one day.
Kevin, before I ask my last question, where should people look for you online?
So the Royal We is YouTube primarily, YouTube presence, or you can visit www.theroyalwe.com. I have some information there. Instagram at Join the Royal We. And yeah.
Great. We'll put links to that in the description for everybody to check out. And Kevin, my final question is, I've heard you speak about the role of permission in this healing process. What is that permission? Do we need it? How do we get it?
Yeah, permission for me is, there's a couple of different things that I approach people with. And one is, you don't need other people's permission to do what's best for you, right? I come from heavy-handed parenting, right? We're so used to asking for permission to this. Many of us didn't even think we can even express our thoughts and our feelings. I mean, I grew up, my father was very much like, don't cry, I'll give you something to cry about type of guy. So I never quite learned how to express my voice, how to express my concerns. And a narcissistic society has thrived off of that. It's almost as if they are able to pick that up. Oh, this person's not going to speak up for himself, right? It's not because they're not strong. It's not because they don't have something they want to say. It's because they've been conditioned to believe that they need permission. I have to wait my turn to talk. I have to. Do you want me to share with you my feelings? I'm waiting for you to ask if I can share my right? You don't need other people's permission. You don't need other people's permission to get out of a relationship. You don't need people's permission to leave a job if that you're not getting along. You don't need permission for any of this. It's the only permission that you really need is your own. Do you want out of this relationship? If so, you have to give yourself permission, right? I feel like a lot of times when we are looking for closure from a abusive family dynamic or an abusive situation, a lot of times that closure that we're seeking is their permission. It's like you're waiting for them to say, you know what, you're right. This relationship was bad. I was taking complete advantage of you and I loved it. You may go. You can go, right? I've done enough damage to you. I get it. I'm not mad at you. It's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. So the permission comes to the self. You have to give yourself permission and be able to say, look, self, I give you permission. You've been given to this knucklehead for far too long. It's not, you know what I mean? Nothing's changing. It's getting worse. The permission is right here. I've got to get out. I've got to save myself at this point.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for sharing that and for this interview and for your time and your videos and everything. I really appreciate this.
Thank you.
To help raise awareness about narcissistic abuse, please share this video. It helps a lot.